Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Devil's Advocate Trades Edition with your host, Lisa McGrath. I am joined today by Kyle Bailey, who is in Front Burner Marketing. Super excited to have a chat with him. We're just taking a walk down south, and he is in Texas. So, yay! We got one of our first Americans on the podcast, which is super exciting for me because I love construction and I love hearing about how the different regions deal with it. Now, it won't be super different because I'm Albertan, and for all of you that are Canadian, know that Alberta is the basically provincial Texas. So this will be fun. I'm super happy. Thanks, Kyle, for being with me.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Happy to
so
be here.
thank you. So tell me a little bit about Front Burner Marketing.
Yeah, so I've had an agency. I've had my agency for almost 15 years now. Came into it out of the trades. I was in construction back then, looking for a transition out. I was almost 40, and so I was thinking I've got to do something different where I'm not dependent on my back anymore. And I had done different types of sales through the years, and a friend of mine was talking about the internet, and I was telling him he was about to build a fence, and I had done a lot of fence work in the past, and I said, "Well, when you're ready, let me know, and I'll help you save some money." He asked me how, and I walked him through all these different options, and he said, "People would pay a lot of money to know that." And I said, "Well, what am I supposed to do? Go door to door? Like, go, you want to buy this fence building system from me? And he said no, and he explained how the internet worked, and kind of the light went on, and that's what got me into it. Started right as Facebook um, launched business sites, uh, and so back then, when Facebook launched business sites, everybody thought that was going to replace Google, and so just dove head deep into head first into the Facebook world, and then transitioned into SEO, and then I launched my own agency in 2010.
Okay.
And so now what I've done is I've pivoted to only doing um, local home service businesses. That's my market.
Okay, so I got to make sure I got this clear. So you focus still in construction, but
hmm
you help your local area with the SEOs?
So basically, the my market is if you're a plumber, if you build decks, you build pools, you install pools, you do HVAC work, you do attic insulation. I've got an attic insulation client, remodeling, kitchen remodeling, bathroom remodeling, whole home remodeling, roofing, any of these trades types, that's going to be my market. Anyone where a homeowner is going to pick up the phone and go, "Hey, I need help with X." Water damage restoration. I got off a call with a water damage restoration guy earlier today. So those are all people that a homeowner is going to call. So it doesn't work. Google doesn't work as well for commercial, because with commercial you have RFP, you have BOMA and different organizations where you have. I think of it as pocket business, basically relationship business. You go build relationships with these people, and you're going to be the first one they call, right? So with homeowners, it's different. I need help. I need to. I need somebody to come right away. I'm going to pick up the phone and call, and that Google's going to drive that decision.
Okay, gotcha. So you help them so that people can find
Exactly.
them. Got
Yeah,
it.
that's exactly right.
Makes sense. That's like, you know what? That's an amazing service to have because a lot of people don't do that. Like I know even for my industry, like well, we're in the same industry, but for my business, because I'm a consultant that did
hmm
similar like what you did when you were saying to me that, someone said that you went and found them options on how to save money with a similar, if not just as good product to move forward with. And so I do something similar to that as a consultant for condos. So
hmm
I specialize in condos. And I chose
Mm,
condos because my advocacy runs really deep. So it's a passion of mine to be an advocate. And so these are all like board volunteers. These are people making $1 million decisions.
right.
Um, with the only thing that they all have the same is their investment. And they get a lot of scrutiny by their ownership. They get a lot of scrutiny by a lot of different people. So to bring someone like me in to stand on their side to make sure no one overtakes them, because I've watched that so many times with contractors where they sell you one thing. It's like the bait and switch. So it's like, I'm
Mm,
going to sell you one thing and then, oh no, we got to do this. And that's why I always try to explain to my clients never take the lowest bid because the
right.
lowest bid will end up being the highest bid, if not more. With
Yep.
all the change orders that are going to come through, I'm like, they're just trying to predatory price you. So don't do
Oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
always try and explain people what that is because people are like, predatory price me. And I'm like, yes, if someone's coming in and I know that this job, because I'm an estimator as well. So if I know that this job
Mhm.
is going to be $1.2 million and they're coming in at 700,000, they're not even paying themselves at that point. This job itself is $1.2 million.
Right.
So, or even just like a simple I say simple, it's not simple, but a window project, right? Which is $400,000 based on the size of condo, this, that, and the other thing. And let's say it's $400,000 product, whatever, this, that, and the other thing. And I know it's going to come out to about 400,000, even with a contingency of $50,000 put into it. And they're like, oh, 275. I'm like, don't even touch them. Don't even touch them.
Yeah.
You'll be paying 500,000, and you guys will all be cash calling. Don't do it.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
get that. So I love what you do. That's great. So it helps bring people to their people in their local area. And now, do you vet these people at all when you're talking to these clients of yours that are in the trades? Do you vet them?
So are you asking me like if I have like an HVAC company, do I check them out to make sure they're not shady before I
Yeah.
start helping them get found?
Yeah.
Essentially. So you can kind of it's pretty hard to hide that anymore. The internet is too transparent. Social is too transparent. It's too easy to tell the story of how somebody stole from you. And so, yeah, I mean,
That's true.
my world is all about the name of the person.
Yeah.
So if I search Bob's HVAC company in Dallas, Texas, then that is I'm going to find every instance of that because I'm going to cross-reference their name, their address, and their phone number. And every time they've been mentioned, that's going to come up. That's part of my research anyway. So the first thing I'm going to see is all these stories. And then, like, if they're a 2-year-old company, but he says he's got 20 years experience, I'm going, okay, well, what was the previous iteration, right?
Yeah.
So before it was Bob's, what did he call it? Freedom AC,
Hmm.
and you just search first and last name, then the industry, and then you can look for scam, you can look for ripoff, you can look for all these different things, and you'll find these different stories if they're out there.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's pretty easy to do anymore. It's pretty rare that, and then you talk to the people. I always tell people I do sales consulting. Did a sales consulting kind of class yesterday, and I always tell people when you talk about money, look people in the eye.
Yep.
And when you say this is the price, you look them in the eye, you can tell exactly where they're coming from because everything's all roses until the money hits the table. And so, when if somebody won't commit to something with me as a contractor, if they have trouble committing, if they commit and then they change, that's an automatic red flag. I had a lady just the other day. I was talking to her regarding a referral partner who brought me into the deal.
Yep.
And I said, hey, this is a deal. This is kind of where I'm coming from. They then copied the referral partner to a new email and said, I wish referral partner would have been honest with me when they did this and this, Kyle. They didn't tell. And I was like, done. I'm not ever doing business with you because that's such a sideways thing. So people tell you who they are. You
Yeah.
just got to believe it when they tell you.
Well,
Look
that's
for the
it.
signals and believe it. So in my way, yes, I do vet them. Yeah. There's no sense in doing business with somebody who's
Agreed.
sideways or shady or something like that. It's not gonna go anywhere.
Agreed. Can you do me a favor? I just
Sure.
need to, like, I have a cold, so I just need to blow my nose. Can you give me like 2 seconds?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No problem at all.
So it makes my podcast uncensored.
Listen,
Normal
I'm the
people
same
doing.
way.
What's funny is I'll post it just as is, and people are like, "Did she just run away to blow her nose?" It's like, yes, I'm a normal person. I have a
Yep,
cold.
yep.
I've had
That's
this
it.
cold. I got back from Mexico, and I've had this cold ever since. So,
Oh, where'd you go in Mexico?
what's that?
Where'd you go in Mexico?
The Mayan Riviera. It was really beautiful in Maya. I went to Tulum. It's the first time I've ever been to Mexico.
Oh, I've heard
Yeah.
Tulum is
So
quite
Tulum is
nice.
beautiful, and we went into the cenotes, which one of the ones that I went to was a cave, and it
Mhm.
like the minerals that were depositing from the caves were
Yeah,
like this far from like your head, like you had to swim
yeah.
through, and it was crazy, but it was so much fun. And then there's like these,
Stalactites.
yeah, what's that?
stalactites. So
It,
so the stalagmites
is that what it's called?
grow on the ground.
Okay.
Stalactites, I always remember it because stalactites cling to the ceiling.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I just learned something new today.
there
Thank
you
you.
go. There you go. That's why I do home construction, so I can talk about spelunking in caves.
There you go.
No, but those underground things are cool. So
It's
that's
super
really cool.
cool. And like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get so I'm really scared of open water, which
Oh,
is really
interesting.
funny. But in the cave I wasn't. I'm not
Mhm.
claustrophobic. So I was fine. Like there's bats in the cave. Bats don't bother me. I mean,
Interesting.
I grew up with my mom. So my mom is Caucasian and my dad is West Indian. So I grew up a
Okay.
lot with my mom's side of the family. They're all like
Hmm.
hunters. So, like you learn how to hunt and shoot guns and all that jazz. So that's nothing that's I'm not scared of a lot of things, but the ocean terrifies me, so I won't go swimming in the ocean. So I went to go and do an inlet where we could swim, and then I did the worst mistake ever. I read the board of the different types of creatures, animals, whatever, like a marine life that come into the inlet. And at first
Right.
it was going good. It was like, oh, look at all these pretty fish, blah, 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 blah. Then it was like the one that got me. It wasn't even the nurse shark. The nurse shark, I was like, it was the barracuda. The minute I saw barracuda, I was like, I'm out.
Right.
I'm good on land. You know what? I'm good on
Yeah.
land. Not to sound like a gun-toting moron, but you know what? Like, cause I do like guns. I like all that stuff. So for me, I
Hmm.
was like, there's a reason why I have legs. There's a reason why firearms exist and why
That's
we
right.
hunt. And we don't hunt in the water. We're not aqua people. So I'm
That's
not
right.
Aquaman. I'm good. I went into the inlet. I will tell you. I was like, you're gonna conquer your fear, Lisa. You're just gonna go in and look, and I did. And there's like the fish, like when you swim in lakes and rivers, the fish are scared of you. They don't swim around you. They're like, I'm out,
Right.
right?
Right.
But in the ocean, they're like, oh, here's a school of fish just swarming you. And you're like, so I started to get anxiety, and I'm not used to having anxiety. I mean, I was born in the like super early 80s. So for
Hmm.
me, like that's anxiety isn't really a thing. It's just like, like pull your big boy pants up and let's go. Like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I've always been. So when I started to like, I couldn't breathe in my snorkel mask. I was like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
All these fish are coming at me, and I'm like, oh my god. But what triggered it the worst, where I was like, I'm done, I'm out, I'm going on land, was when, because you're all around this big rock, but then what happens is there's a drop off the rock where you go and you swim in open water. It's because it's an inlet. It's not open water, but it's
Right.
open water to
Right.
me. So it's
Right.
all blue. It's beautiful. Beautiful. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not.
It's
It's
like all
beautiful.
clear.
Super clear.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
gorgeous. And I'm like, and all I could think of is I'm not going to see this barracuda coming because it's got an advantage. It lives here. So I'm like, I'm out, uh, tapping out, like,
Yeah.
and I went and
Yeah.
sat on that and my girlfriend. So, and it's funny because, a lot of times people sometimes get selfish with their fears, and they like tell their friend, I'm scared, I'm going to go in, you should come with me, like hold my hand. But like, I'm in my 40s. That's like, those days are done. I'm like, listen, I've got a problem. You love this. This is your thing. You go. You got a GoPro to do it. You're all about it. You go do it. So my girlfriend went off. She did her thing. And I went and sat on land. And then she comes back and she's like, I didn't know where you were. I was looking for your body. I'm like, oh my God. I'm fine. I'm on land. And I'm like, I'm like, they saw me get out. And she's like, yeah, they told me later on down when I was trying to look for you. I was like, I don't know where Lisa is. And they're like, oh, she got up. She got out. And I'm like,
That's
you
awesome.
should have kind of expected this. I told you I was scared of the ocean. So you should have kind of expected that Lisa's a good chance her ass is on land. So,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, that's what I'm used to, right? So I'm used to doing all that kind of stuff. But it was fun, and it was an amazing experience. And I love Tulum. And the guide that we had told us all about the Mayan ruins and
Hmm.
like the import exports, and how there's different classes of like there's the rich and the poor. Now we all know when there's the rich and the poor, there's different levels of it. He didn't get
Hmm.
into it, but he talked about how everything intertwined with the sun and the moon, and like how the days worked and how they understood the calendars, and why the Mayan calendar exists. So
Mm.
the Maya calendar is really cool, and I wanted to get one for my son. And I made a mistake. I was on the beach, and you know how they try to sell you everything on the beach? So this one guy came up and he had a really cool trinket and it was sterling silver and you shook it and it was like a little charm, but it had the Mayan calendar on it. He wanted $50. And I was like, now as a Canadian, we're even cheaper because we got to convert it to US. So we're like,
Right.
right? So we're like,
Right.
$50, like I'll give you 30.
Mhm.
Like you try to weasel them down. And then I went into Playa del Carmen and they're like 180. And I was like, American? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, hard no. I'm gonna go back to the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go find Buddy at the beach. But he never came back. So I was like, shit.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
It is awful. But yeah, so I had this little bit of this cold since I came back and because it's so humid over there and it's wonderful and it's beautiful and then you get back to like Alberta that's dry. It's so dry here. And I'm like,
Yeah,
ugh. And
yeah,
then
your body's
we got off the
freaking
plane.
out.
So our plane was delayed and we got off the plane at -15 coming out of Mexico at what would have been what plus so Celsius it was plus 26. So
It's probably
26
about
to
75.
70s.
Is that right?
Yeah, 70s
Yeah.
like 72, 73.
Hmm.
Would have been, and then we're coming back home to like -15, which is like -0 to you guys. So I'm like, it was so funny. My girlfriend and I were walking to to go eat, and it was like 19 that day. I'd gotten a little bit colder, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm a little bit cold." I'm like, "You bite your goddamn tongue. We're going back to -15."
Right.
This is nothing. And she
Yeah.
started laughing, and she's like, "You're right, you're right." But it was a great time. I can't deny it.
Yeah.
But getting back to what you were saying,
Oh,
uh, I love what you're saying. You have to vet people, and you're right. It's so easy on the internet to find out anything you need to find out. The other thing is that there's a lot of um, and I said this on another podcast, and I'll say it again, is there's a lot of keyboard trolls, keyboard warriors, keyboard trolls that will go on and they'll just, like you had said, like you're dealing with someone who all of a sudden, loops someone in and tries to like call out an aspect where there's no reason for it, right? So they'll call and or they let their emotions get the best of them
hmm,
or their ego.
hmm.
And emotions are usually driven with ego, and ego is usually driven with emotions. It's like, I'm
Sure.
going to show you, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to whatever. And then that
Yeah.
ego comes out, right? Which is funny because when I started my podcast, that was one of the things I said, learn and grow or get crushed by your ego.
Mm.
Because that's really what like, trades are so bad for ego. And I'm like, leave it at the door. And so I love that you're doing something like when I get to meet people inside of the trade, when I say inside of construction that have come out of construction but still make it their home because they know so much and they are such an asset to the industry but in a different way. I think that's amazing. And I had a gentleman on my podcast the last time his just posted, and his name is Adam,
Mm.
and he was in almost a fatal accident. He walked away from a horrible incident and he
Wow.
had to change his entire life. He couldn't go
Oh,
back to
wow.
he was a welder and he couldn't go
Oh,
back
yeah.
to welding. So he went into
Yeah.
finance,
Mm.
and his drive is all to the trades. He wants to
Nice.
help build the trades portfolio financially to
Hmm.
support them so they're not dumping all their money into a financial institution that's just taking their money.
Yeah.
He wants them to actually build a secure plan. So he works for a company that helps them do that. And I
That's
was
cool.
like, and because I told him, I said, well, because he's like, I didn't fit in with those people. I'm like, you're not supposed to fit in with those people. You're supposed to fit in with trades. Trades aren't going to
Mm.
talk to you if you're wearing a suit. They're going to talk to you if you look like one of them.
Hmm.
Right. So I'm
Yeah.
like, and you speak trade. I'm like, you are trades through and through. I'm like, that's all you've done. That's all you've known. You are a journeyman welder. I'm like, you got injured. And I'm like, that's what you bleed. That's who you are. And he was like, it's true, 100%. And I was like, sometimes it's not fitting the mold that makes you
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yep.
I mean, and it's fun. I mean, everyone's always like, oh, you're a female in trades. How's that? I'm like, it's fun. Like, what do you want me to go on? Some like feminist protest about how it's so hard to be in trades and get out and go do something else?
Yeah.
It's not a difficult task. It's like I work with a bunch of dudes. Dudes can be easy to work with and they can be difficult to work with. It depends on who I'm working with and what I'm doing. So,
Yeah. Totally.
yeah. And to me, um, if there's anything I've learned in this industry and being in it for the last like 20 years, the one thing I can tell you solid is, and I know you'll agree with me, is men operate, they're very simplistic people. Are you listening and are you doing your job? So are you capable and are you ready to work? That's it.
Hmm.
Other than that, all the other like bullshit is not is that's just what it is, right? It's just noise.
Yeah.
So they don't really care. Some of them will get to know people on site, this and that, whatever, but at the end of the day, like I mean, because I always bug the supervisors, I call them clipboard cowboys. I'm like, and I'm like, what's going on there, clipboard cowboy? And he's like, what? And I'm like, I haven't seen you do anything but walk around with your clipboard. So, and he's like, well, you're a consultant. And I'm like, but I've also, I'm like, all the garbage they've hauled to the curb, I've hauled to the back of the truck
Mm.
because every person matters and every position matters and everybody is a team. I'm like, when I come on site, I
Mhm.
build a team. That doesn't mean I'm like, I get my nails done, I get my lashes done. Sure, I look pretty, but you know what? I can still work. I will still jump in the trenches with those boys and I will pull floor and I will sling rock and I will do whatever
Mhm.
they need to help get them home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if they're lagging because it's hard work. And I'm like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not going to do that for 8 hours. You guys are built for that, but I'll come help you. If you're like, if it's getting close to lunch and it's 12:15 and these guys are hungry, I'll go through all the garbage in the garbage. I don't care. Like, I'll help you. Why
Hmm.
not? Like, I think that, and that also is what brings a different level of respect, especially being a consultant on site and being female, is that they're like, oh, she's helping us. And it's like, yeah, I'm helping you.
Yeah.
Let's go. I want to go for lunch too. I don't want to
Yeah.
sit there and watch you do it. Like, I almost feel useless to sit there and
Yeah.
watch someone, you know what I mean? Like, they're just walking
Hmm.
along, hauling all this garbage, and you're just watching them. Like, you feel kind of like a useless tit at that point. You're like, why am I here? Like, I'm capable. I got 2 feet and a heartbeat, like,
There
let's
you go.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you're right. Like, I'm at that point in my life where a lot of the boys that have been around for a long time, and even the women too, that have been in the trade since they're in their 20s or late teens, they're breaking down. We're in our
Mm.
40s. They're breaking down. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I love it, but I don't want to do this anymore. But then at the same time, they're in that like position of, I don't really want to get into the office politics either. I don't
Yeah.
want an expectation created on me that isn't realistic to the site. Like a lot of them would be amazing superintendents and site supers and assistant site supers, and just to help run the trades and run the people and make sure things are going properly and bringing those greenhorns in so that they can train them on how to do it. And that's their whole job is basically to make sure things are ordered and do it like a little bit of the paperwork and get the safety done, but then to train all these like this new generation coming in to train them on how to do the job properly. But that's not what's happening a lot of times.
Mm.
Some companies are doing it, but a lot aren't, and it's
Yeah.
really quite frustrating. I don't know what goes on in the States, but I'm pretty sure that Canada and the States aren't too different on that.
Well, the residential side, it sounds like you're talking a lot more about the commercial side, but that's the way it would sound in the States.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everybody in the States is facing trades problems, but home construction guys are too. I mean, I talk to guys all the time. They're like, yeah, it'd be great if I could get more business, but I can't handle any more capacity because I can't keep anybody on the job. They have guys. I think it's slowly starting to get better, but they have guys like that'll show up. I talked to an HVAC guy just a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, "Yeah, I get these guys on the first time they go in the attic,
Yeah.
they literally walk home. They walk, they call their mom, and they walk until their mom comes and picks them up
Oh wow.
because it's hard. Attics are hot in Texas. You get the right attic, it could be 160 in the
Oh yeah.
middle of the summer, and that's no joke.
Well,
But
I have a buddy
everything's
who
hard.
truck drives, and I swear he was somewhere in Texas, and his tires were melting to the concrete. And I was like, "Where are you?" Because he always
That's
gets so
that's
excited
odd. I
to go.
don't hear that often.
Yeah, well, because he
Yeah.
always gets excited to go to Texas because we're Canadian, right? So he's always like, his
Mhm.
favorite places to go is the South. So Texas and the South. He's like, "It's best barbecue, best steaks,
Oh
best this."
yeah.
And I'm like,
Listen, let me tell you. I've been even in other parts of Texas that you can't touch Austin barbecue. Dallas barbecue absolutely stinks compared to Austin. But I'll bet you what it was is he drove over some asphalt that had filler in it because the asphalt filler
okay.
will melt. It will totally
Oh,
melt and get on your shoe. That's probably what it was. Because we have tires in Texas and none of our tires melt. So
but
yeah.
those are Texan tires. Those aren't Albertan tires. Those
That's
aren't
right.
Ontario tires. Those are
Not
Texan
the
tires.
Canadian tires. Yeah, Yankee tires. Yeah.
Those are
But
those are
getting back
tough
to your
like
question, like,
armadillos.
I think what made me really hone in on just home construction is how much Google has changed,
Hmm.
and people don't realize how much has changed in the last 18 months because Google's under siege by AI now.
Yeah.
AI is the first legitimate competitor that Google's ever had, and they're freaking out about it. They've released more uh, large updates, large core updates in the last 12 months
Okay.
than ever in history. They've never done this many big updates in 1 year.
Huh.
And they're trying to figure out how to so both AI from a search standpoint has affected Google negatively, but also the ability to deploy content at scale. Because if you know how to use AI, you can put out 1,000 pages of content over a weekend.
Yeah.
And so now how does Google sort over which one's the best piece to return for a search?
Hmm.
So they've got a lot of problems, and their fixes, quote unquote fixes, have really negatively affected the small business owner because it pushes their results down in the SERP. So a SERP, search engine return page. I don't know what it's like in Canada. Y'all use Google up there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. In some countries, they don't let them use it, so they're
Really?
using alternative browsers.
Hmm.
But but yeah, so like, you've got the ads, then below the ads here, you will typically have a what we call aggregators, which is like Yelp. Yelp would be the top 10 HVAC contractors for Waco, Texas, whatever. Then below that, you will have what's called Google Guaranteed a lot of times,
Hmm.
and that's another way Google makes money off of ads. Then you'll have the map return. Well, Google used to return 10, then 7, then 5, and now 3. So
Huh.
now only 3 contractors get into that map pack. Then below that, you'll start having website listings. But even with that, the top ones they return are still aggregators.
Hmm.
So Joe Blow's website, his plumbing company website now is way down the page and they don't get clicks anymore. And that's because of how much Google's changing. So now the only way to win organically as a local business is on the map. And so that's why I do what I do now. Is help them get found on the map.
Okay. So utilizing the Google map is what you're saying?
Yeah, because the vast majority of people looking for any kind of home service are
Hmm.
going to call off Google Map. And they're going to
Okay.
call usually the first person, but definitely the top three. They'll never go to page 2 in Google Maps. That's
It's
just
true.
very, very rare. They're going to
Hmm.
call one of the first 3 people they see.
It's true. I do it too.
Yeah. So if you can get
Yeah.
to that page one position,
Yeah.
then you've put yourself well ahead of your competition.
Yeah. I don't,
And so
I'm
that's
not
what I
gonna
do.
lie to you. I don't really pay attention to that. I should pay attention to these things more, but I
Well, you're
don't.
in the commercial world.
Well, I am and I'm not because I'm in the commercial world based on the fact that
Mhm.
condo is considered commercial depending on who you're dealing with because it's a higher scale. But you're right. I
Mhm.
don't do residential like single homes, right? Single family
Right.
homes. And the reason I don't do single family homes is because a lot of people don't see the investment side of it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So they get kind of upset when I deal when someone like me comes in and I'm like this great big price because they're like, well, why would I pay you? And I'm like, because I'm going to make sure these guys don't screw you over. I'm going to make sure they're doing their job right. I've been in trades for
Right.
20 years. I know exactly what to
Mhm.
look for in building. I know exactly how they're constructed. I know how to read blueprints. So
Mhm.
I'm going to come in and make sure that they're estimating accordingly. Like, and I would, and I did it in my own house. Like, I'm kind of an asshole. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes you just have to be. And I wanted to get my basement finished. And so
Mhm.
I brought in like 6 companies to bid my basement. And I ended up and it's funny because I went to the local supplier and said, "Give me
Mhm.
your best reno guys." And the suppliers are always the best place to go. And so my supplier went to Windsor Ply, and Windsor Ply in Airdrie, Alberta, gave me a list of guys that do this. So, which is Windsor Plywood is what it is. So we went and I went and I called all of these guys, and some of them came out. Some of them I was like, underwhelmed. One guy was really great, came out, he was very thorough, whatever. And then I called a couple of big companies just to, because my favorite thing, and this is what I teach my clients, don't give them your budget number. Ask them for the price.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them your budget. They're always going to ask, what's your budget? It doesn't matter what my budget is. I want to know what it's going to cost me to do my basement. I knew what it was going
Mm-hmm.
to cost me. I already estimated it. I already knew what my basement was going to cost. So I started, as you know, just to play with the guy. And it was funny because I was telling my other half works in Builder. And he's a site soup. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
quite funny. And so him and I were talking about this, and I said to him, I'm like, watch, this guy's going to come in. I'm going to tell him my uh budget is 90,000. Watch, he's going to come in right around 90,000. And he's like, we know this is going to happen. And I'm like, but let's just have fun. So I told him, I said, this is what I want for my basement. Here's the design. And I want my whole upstairs painted and all the walls fixed. I want brand new baseboard on all floors, and I want what was it? My stairs going upstairs
Mm-hmm.
to my second floor. I want those redone. And this is all the material I want, blah 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 blah. And I told him, just to warn him, just to see if he'd even take that into consideration. I'm a construction consultant. Okay. So I'm thinking he thought in his brain that maybe I wasn't a very good construction consultant. So of course he came back, $92,000, and I laughed. And I was like, this won't cost more than 70K high. I already know that. I already know what the costs are. I know what the labor costs are. I know what it is. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you guys so much higher? Why are you guys like 30 grand higher? Because my budget's that high. So you figured you could just, and he's like, no, no. And I'm like, I told you I was a construction consultant. You know, I estimated
Mm-hmm.
this. You came and I said, do you not pay attention to your surroundings? You came and looked at my entire house, and inside my office in my house has all of my certifications, all of them. All you had to do was look at three of them: construction project management and estimation are two certifications on my wall. You would have known right then and there that I knew how much it was going to cost.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but were you just like, it was kind of like in my brain, I'm like, was this we'll just see, if you don't ask it's always going to be no. But I'm like, it's a hard no at that point. And now I'm not even going to refer you to people. So that's why I always tell people, don't give your budget.
Right. Yep.
Never give your budget. Ask them, how much is it going to cost? If you can afford it, you can afford it. If you can't, you can't. At least you know a number that's realistic. And
Mm-hmm.
ask them, are you aiming high? What products are you using? Are you going, like, there's different products at different price points, right? Like, especially even just in paint, depending if you're like, I mean, out here, I'm sure you guys have the same type of paint, but we have like Benjamin Moore and Cloverdale, and we have Bear. So we have all of these paint, and they're all different prices, and it depends. Are you using a semi-gloss? Are you using an eggshell? What color are you going with? Is it a different mix of color? Because sometimes those
Yeah.
things will come in, because it's like, if you order 5 gallons of a color that's not easily to resell, they're going to charge you a little bit more. Because they're like, if
Yeah.
you don't come and get this, this is not going to be
Mm-hmm.
easy to sell, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's like the gray. So when you're doing a gray palette or like a earth tones palette, they're usually pretty reasonable, because they know that the next guy will probably pick that color up because it's a hot
Yeah.
color on the market.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So those are all things
Yep.
to pay attention to. And then I love when they're going through baseboard, and I'm like, baseboard's not expensive. And they're like, well, it depends. I'm like, I'm not putting crown molding on my floor. Like, settle down, gentlemen.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but it's fun to watch people try and get one over on you, and I always have fun with that. So, and even with my other half, when I triggered him to design my basement for me, because he's really smart and looking at design, and I was like, I need you to design my basement, and he's like, I'm not doing that. We don't live together, so
Ah.
he's like, I'm not doing that, and I'm like, why not? He's like, because then I don't want to hear about how you don't like the design and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, just design the freaking basement, and he's like, I'm not doing it. So you trigger our trades guys that have, most of them have like ADHD, OCD, like they're perfectionist, detail oriented. Most of them are jack of all trades because they have ADHD. So, so
Right.
I, so that's what I did is I triggered him. I brought him downstairs, and I'm like drawing, just being an asshole, just drawing. Like, I'm like, if I put the wall all the way up here against the mechanical, then, then it will give more room. And then I have both windows inside this room and blah, blah, blah. And what it does is it creates this narrow hallway that you can't even get a bed down. And you can see it. He's just twitching, his eyes just twitching. And he's like, we're not doing that. And then he goes through and he starts drawing. He grabs a Sharpie marker and he starts drawing the entire. And I'm like, oh yeah, that looks really cool. Can you draw it on a piece of paper for me? And he's like, yes. And so he's like sitting there and he's like drawing it out on a piece of paper. And I hand it to my contractor right in front of him. And I go, that's the design I want. Thank you. And he's like, son of a bitch. He's like, never again. I'm like, I've gotten you so many times this way. It's easy.
Right.
Poor guy. He's just like, woman. But I got a beautiful basement out of it. I have no complaints. I got a beautiful
There you
basement.
go.
My daughter lives in the basement. She loves it. She loves the design. It's a beautiful design. It's very open. And it's like, I mean, I could honestly tell you there's nothing to complain about. So it's got a
That's
full
awesome.
bathroom downstairs. It's got like a little office space. It's got a living room. It's got a bedroom. Like it's beautiful. He
That's
did a great
cool.
job.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean,
Very
I
cool.
guess women are known to complain a lot. I don't know. Maybe it runs deep in his brain. He's like, she's gonna whine about it. And I'm like, no, I love it. But I always like to bug him. I'm like, have you seen my beautiful basement? This really cool guy designed it for me. And he's like,
Right.
mm-hmm. Gotta bug him a little bit, right?
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. So you do the SEOs, you do residential. Residential is hard for me. I'm gonna pull back to that residential piece.
Mm-hmm.
Residential is hard for me because the one thing I hear the most from trades is that they don't get paid.
Mm.
I look at so it's hard for me to look at because I look at there's so many pop-ups in Alberta and in and around Canada, and I'm sure in the States too, where there's these pop-ups, these guys that are like, I'm really good at this, so I'm just going to create a company and I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand what it takes to run a company. You understand what it takes. I understand what it takes. It's hard. There are
Mm-hmm.
days where you, for lack of a better term, don't eat.
Yeah.
I've got two kids. I'm a single mom. There's days where I had to say to the kids, we don't have Netflix this month. We don't have all of the wonderful luxurious things. We're going to hone in on our Christmas. We're going to do these things because a house is more important and food is more important than all of these other things. And that happens where checks don't come in fast enough or this, that, and the other thing, or you're dealing with insurance claims. And it
Yep.
happens, right? So when you're not getting paid the regular 2 week pay, right, or monthly pay, it gets hard because all those bills are coming out at the same time. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, how do I pay for all this? Right? So it becomes difficult in that aspect. So when you're dealing with the residential side, a lot of clients want to, well, first of all, a lot of them stand over you. They don't really understand the trade and they're standing over you and they're critiquing what you're doing. Sometimes they have merit and it's just a matter of teaching them, right? It's just a matter of saying, you know, this is what we're doing and why. It usually backs them off, but a lot of trades just get frustrated because they're with you in tow on everything you do.
Yeah.
And that gets hard because you're like, when you're you have to explain what you're doing when you're doing it all the time, that becomes frustrating. And then if they don't like that you're doing that, or they think that you're trying to pull one over on them, or it's going to have an additional cost. Like when I did my basement, one of the additional costs, which I knew was going to happen, which I expect, but I knew was an additional cost, was having my furnace blown out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what I did was they had to blow out my furnace twice, and the second time was on them because the guys that were in the house were still cutting wood after we had blown the furnace out and everything was pretty much done, and then they were in there cutting. And I was like, "What are you doing? Cut outside." And they're like, "Whoa." I'm like, "Cut outside." I'm like, "I don't care if there's ram board on my floor. The house was already done. The cleaners were already in. You guys have to come back and fix a few things, and you're cutting in the house. Get out." So I told them, I'm like, "You guys have to reblow the furnace back out. Sorry, all the vents have
Yeah.
to be done." My son has asthma. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. And
Yeah.
so, and he did. He came back and did it, and he was a great contractor. He was local, which is why I'm glad that you're doing what you do because the guy that I chose is local to my area. And he was
Yeah.
great. He was easy to get a hold of. He came right away. I mean, and I wasn't the only person he was servicing, right? There was like lots of different people that he was out there helping out and getting their basements done, and he did a great job. So, you know,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah, he did a great job. And he was, and he told me, he's like, I'm renovating my own house and I'm not getting enough time to do it. And I said, well, that's because you're too busy doing everybody else's house that when you get home, you don't want to do your own.
That's right. That's
That
right.
that's what it is, right? Most of the guys in trades, doesn't matter what their specialty is, if they need to do it in their house, it's the last thing they want to do.
Yeah.
because they're just like, oh my God, I do this all day. I don't want to do this at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're hot and you're tired and you're wore out. You can't give your best self. I don't know if you ever heard of Chris Voss. Chris Voss talks a lot about, do all your hard work in the morning because that's when you have the max capacity.
Mhm.
And if you force your customer or employee or anybody you're negotiating, Chris Voss is all about negotiation, but he typically applies it to sales and his YouTube stuff. And he talks about like if you force somebody into a negotiation situation of any kind and it's around lunchtime and they have not eaten yet, you're going to have a harder time because they're going to have a harder time regulating their emotions. You talked a minute ago about ego and ego and emotion and all that stuff. And usually, if emotion is taking over, that's because typically we're trying to defend something.
Mhm.
We're trying to defend a perceived threat, right? Well, that perceived threat gets a lot higher when your body's getting signals that we might die because we don't have enough food. Those signals start throwing off a lot faster. So,
Yeah.
you get somebody at the end of the day, they're hot and they're tired. I know that was the last time we wanted to approach my dad about, can we go to Six Flags? Like right after he gets this, like let him get home, let him kick his feet up, let him, cool off a little bit. Then we can start asking for things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
No, it's absolutely true. And it's funny that you say that because I'm someone who's all about paying attention to the staff. And when I go into a project, I build that team. That team is not
Mm,
construction person A, construction company B, we're all one team. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, we're all one team. We all work together. I need to know what your schedules are so that you guys aren't bottlenecking, so that you guys aren't pissed off. And when I would go on site and have meetings with them, because I did a lot of the safety meetings as well to go over the safety protocol on site.
yeah.
I'm designated as an HSA, so I would go on and do the protocols for them, and I would tell them, I was like, a lot of times I would bring them breakfast and not donuts. People do not operate on sugar; they get hyper. So
Yep.
I bring like breakfast sandwiches, and I would go to the local mom and pop shop and I would order like 2 dozen or whatever the case may be, and I'd pay for it out of my own pocket. I wouldn't bank it back to the companies. I wouldn't bank it back to the client. I'd pay for it, and I would
Hmm.
bring it to site, and I would be like, you know, here's something with sustenance in it, not empty calories and sugar. And
Yep.
I'm going to go through this. It's going to take me 20 minutes to go through this. And you're going to half listen, half not. But you know what? You're going to work really well because most guys don't eat in the morning. They wait till about 11 noon, sometimes 1, and then they eat. But by
Hmm.
that time, they're pissed off and bitchy. So,
Right.
right. And then they go to lunch, but then they're longer off their lunch and then they're tired because they binged and they're
Yep.
exhausted. They're like, "Oh my God, I ate so much. I just want to take a nap." And I'm like, everybody does that. So then when I give them the breakfast sandwiches, they don't binge at lunch. They eat exactly what they need to and they come back and they finish their day and they're gone and they're happy. So you're
There you
right.
go.
And everybody gets hangry. I don't care who you are, everybody gets hangry. So
Yep.
I would rather spend money making everybody happy. It's not, don't get me wrong, I don't do the pizza party. If I was in control of all their money, I would make sure they all got bonuses, but I'm not in control of their money. So I try to make their days as easy as possible by, showing them that they are appreciated and that I want them to continue to work at their max capacity without feeling like garbage. So,
Right.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much how it goes. So, tell me about Texas. I want to hear about the barbecue out there because my buddy claims it's the best thing since sliced bread. But I live in Alberta and we got really amazing Alberta beef. And I mean, there's a lot of really great cooks and smokers out here. Like, we've done wicked briskets and all kinds of stuff out here. So, what's the big difference out there that might be that we don't have out here? Is it just the spices?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wouldn't know how to compare it. I just know that there's typical barbecue, even in Texas, there's typical barbecue. Like you go to Dallas, you can't get good barbecue. It's okay, but it's just barbecue's so expensive now. I would never pay for like I went in the other day. I got 2 slices of brisket, two little short ribs,
Hmm.
and a slice of turkey. It was a 3 meat plate. It was $27. I'm like, I could have got a steak for $27.
Yeah.
So it better be good barbecue if you're going to pay for it these days. But yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, if you got good smokers and you can get good moist brisket,
Hmm.
you're probably in good shape. but yeah, it's the rubs, it's understanding how to pick the meat in the first place.
Hmm.
You've got to pick a good brisket in the first place. So, different companies are better at it than others.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. He always claims that it's so amazing, and I wasn't sure if there was a secret that you knew that I didn't, because Alberta beef is amazing, and I know that we take pride in how we cook our steaks. And I know that I mean, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure Texans eat steaks similarly to us, which is a lot of people, if you're anything over a medium, we stare at you like you're dumb. So
Oh yeah. I mean, anymore. I mean, do you cook your own steak?
I do. I'm a medium rare to rare girl.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm in the rare camp now. I was at medium once I entered the first I was at well my whole life because that's how we ate them as a kid.
Oh,
And
geez.
if we ever ate steak. And then I had a medium one time and I was like, that's incredible.
Hmm.
And then now what I do is I sous vide. You ever use a sous vide? Yeah. So I sous vide to about 95 degrees.
Okay.
So I hold that for an hour and then I sear that. And so it's technically blue,
Yeah.
but it's not cold. I don't like cold center.
No.
So I use it at 90, 95 just to get it up to warm
Yeah.
without cooking it too much. And so I still get a blue steak and then I just sear it as hot as I can possibly get it. About a minute on a side.
Geez, Kyle, that's survival of the fittest. All you need is a lighter and a little bit of salt. You can bite the ass end out of a cow.
Yeah. My uncle used to say, put a band-aid on it, that cow would have lived.
Well, that's all good. No, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's amazing. Like, I mean, yeah, I remember I had like, the cuts, because the cuts are what cost the most, right? So I know that I'm a ribeye girl, so I like
Mm,
ribeye, and I remember, and there's ribeye is expensive, so and I always eat it rare to medium rare. If you
hmm.
bring it out, if I say medium rare and you bring it out rare, I'll eat it. That doesn't bother me because it's rare to medium rare for me. But if you bring it
Right.
out blue, it depends on what spices are on it, because I will eat it
Yeah.
blue because I eat like beef tartare and all that, so that doesn't
Mm,
bother me. Um, but you know, when people bring it out, like if you bring me a steak, any cut, I don't care what it is, and it is medium and more, I stare at you. I'll hand it back. Be like, nope,
yeah.
I
Oh
said
yeah.
medium rare.
Yeah. Overcooked, you're done. It's going
Yeah.
back. I'll tell you what'll change your life.
Okay.
And I hesitate to tell you this because it'll ruin regular steak for you. I never would eat New York strip before.
Okay.
I always wanted ribeye.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the local grocery chain here, I'm sure your places will do it too, but here they'll cut the meat for you.
Yep. Think about your.
So the trick I learned is because my thing was I would always get an inch thick standard cut,
Yeah.
and then by the time you sear it, it's already kind of medium rare.
Yeah.
So I got an inch and three quarter,
Okay. I'll put
and
this
that's
down.
the first thing is I'm going to sous vide that to 90 degrees, then sear it on both sides. It's still blue. It's still like it probably is just very rare at that point. It's probably not blue anymore. But if you get the Wagyu,
Yep.
so you step up to the Wagyu cut, that's a different animal. It's worth it. It's worth
Oh,
the
I
extra
love
money.
Wagyu beef. It's delicious.
Oh
I
my
usually eat
gosh.
it. I usually eat it raw. So I would usually
Oh
when I go
wow,
to the,
nice.
yeah. So
Mm.
we've got beef carpaccio that we have at some of the restaurants, that they make a beef carpaccio, which is basically just shaved Wagyu raw.
Wow.
And
I
then
didn't know
yeah,
that.
and then it's delicious. And you just put it on like a little toast, like a little. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
toast, and then
Yeah.
there's like a little bit of a sauce on it with like little capers. It's delicious. And
Yeah, they sell a steak seasoning here. I'm sure they sell something like that up there, but it's simplifies the seasoning part. What I do is I like to sear it on both sides, so I sear it, and then when I turn it, I put a pat of butter on that side, put a lid on it, let the
yep,
butter start melting, then I wipe the butter into that side, season that side, then when I take it off the burner, put it on the plate, seasoning side down, butter the other side, pat that side, then that steak seasoning on it. That's perfect. Yeah,
I'm gonna
super
have to try
simple.
that.
There's so many fancy ways to season things, but I don't have time for all that. If I got 40 minutes for lunch, that's max, then I'm back to work. So I do a lot of sales consulting, then I do a lot of website, and then I'm leading my team. I got a team of 8 guys now. And so, they're great, but there's always an aspect of herding cats to any team leadership.
Yeah.
So you're jumping in and going, hey, not that way, this way. And man, I love my guys. They do a great job. Um, but then, my typical day, I'm up at usually 6. The first thing I do is I'm checking into my team, anything they need. Then I have
Yep.
my own kind of personal meditation prayer time. Then I'm back into meetings like this one, or I'm going over stuff with clients. And but I do a lot of LinkedIn outreach. That's how you and I met.
Hmm.
And so I have a system for that. So I do a lot of, I've already done 2 website evaluations today, or it's actually holistic, the entire present. So I'm going to look at your social, I'm going to look at your LinkedIn, I'm going to look at your website, and then I'm going to look at your general search return. So if I search your name, how does it return? So one of the
Hmm.
problems a lot of people have, I've got a guy here in Austin that has this problem.
Okay.
They've unfortunately named their business in such a way that it's a generalism as far as the search goes. So the name of his business, it's in Dallas, so it's like Dallas, Texas homes, right? Unfortunately, that's a keyword.
Hmm.
And so anybody looking for a home in Dallas is going to look for Dallas, Texas homes, right?
Yeah.
And so Google can't figure out which one is his business and which one is these other real estate businesses.
Yeah.
And so when people search his business name, they get
Hmm.
other businesses. And so that's a process called disambiguation. It's basically untangling. And so you're trying to separate between what's coming up in the search return and what you want to come up. So there's a lot of branding involved in that. And then I spend a lot of time doing sales consulting as well. So I'll go in and because I've done everything from the outside of the search all the way down into the granular sales in the home.
Hmm.
So I know how to walk into a home and sell pretty much anything. Like I was with these guys and I actually did some demos with them where I went to the home. This was for foundation repair, and I went in and ran the whole appointment. And their eyes were wide. They're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, once you've done this for enough time, it's all the same thing. You're walking into somebody's home. This is their precious place. This
Hmm.
is the most important place in their life. This is where their family lives, right? So the all the fears and concerns are all going to be the same. Is this guy gonna is he going to mess me around? Is he going to take my money? Am I safe? Is my family safe with this guy in the house? All that stuff
Yep.
goes through everybody's mind.
Hmm.
So you're always addressing the same set of problems, a set of fears, and then you get over to the actual functional side of what you're selling. Is this actually going to solve my problem? And so calling out those same sets of problems and then knowing all that, I can speak to the owner of the business intelligently and say, I know this is what you're facing. Let me take this other whole online thing off your plate, where
Hmm.
at least at this part you don't have to worry about it. And the way I do that is I have a guarantee. And so I'm one of the few in the industry that will guarantee placement. I give it 6 months and we talk about the list of keywords that we're going to go for.
Hmm.
And if we don't get that by 6 months, I start working for free until we get it.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, that way the customer all the way that he can, all these guys, they all stand behind their work, right?
Yeah.
But no SEO person will stand behind will guarantee anything.
Right.
And so, and to be fair, Google does say anybody who guarantees placement on Google, don't do business with them. But the backside of that is, I know my business well enough. I believe I can get you here. And if I can't, then I should throw some skin in the game and work for free until I get you there. That's the way I see it.
I think that's a great way to be because you're right. A lot of people, they don't want to do that. Like in the marketing world, they're not willing
Oh,
to
yeah.
put skin in the game, at that level. It's like, well, I'm not working for free. And a lot of them are really outrageously priced, in my opinion. Um, like just some of them are priced really well and it makes sense. And, like if, at the end of the day, as a business owner, if you have a really good person on your side that's helping you with the marketing, it's a drop in the bucket if your ROI is great. But if your ROI is not there and you've been paying this person for 6 months and they're like, well, it's just going to take time and this and that, and there's nothing going else on, I'm like, I'm out. I'm out.
Well,
I've
it's all
wasted time. I've
about
wasted
like
money.
when that iteration happens. So every business has basically a revolution.
Yeah.
Every time your system turns,
Hmm.
you get a lead in, you send a sales guy out, you send the salesperson into that home.
Hmm.
They go through their sales process. The customer buys on 20% of the time, right?
Yeah.
When that happens, what's your margin?
Yeah.
What does that produce for your business?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have an understanding of those numbers, it's real easy to burn a lot of money in marketing.
Yep, and
You
I've
got
done
to
it.
know that, if I bring this guy 100 leads a month, he knows his close rate's 30%, and he knows his margin's 30%, and his average ticket is 10,000. Okay, so 30 times a month, I'm going to bring in $3,000. Okay, now my $3,000 a month isn't so expensive. But on the other side, if you're doing something like carpet cleaning, I won't work for a carpet cleaner because I can't make enough difference for him. He just needs to go shake a lot of hands and kiss a lot of babies because his margin is so low. I mean, he's got to clean 100 carpets a month just
Mhm.
to break even,
Yeah.
And so I give him some free consulting and move on because, there's just not much I can do for him. I'm a holistic strategist. That's really what I am. But there's no real name for that in the home services business.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm looking at everything from your branding all the way down to when your sales guy or your salesperson knocks on that door.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love that because, it is, it's hard. So it's refreshing to hear what you're saying. Because I know a lot of people in industry, so like everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my God, will he go here? Will he go there?" You're like, "No, I'm local," Like, no. Which is the
Yep.
same as me, right? When I was first started, like when I really started to go into the marketing game of my company, um, I was on Alignable. Alignable is
You're unalignable?
yeah. And Alignable is saturated with Americans.
Oh,
Saturated.
yeah.
And I would have people from LA, mostly Dallas, say, "You should come out here. You should come out here. Where are you? You should come out here." So I had a few people from LA, a couple from New York, Miami, but Dallas and Miami were the two largest that were like, "You should come out here and help us." And I was like, American money? I was like, sure I will.
Right, right.
But and I thought about it, but I mean, my kids are getting older, but they're not old enough yet for me to do that kind of traveling.
Mm.
So I
How old
won't.
are your kiddos?
My daughter just turned 14. My son's 11.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So fun
That's very
ages.
cool.
And everyone's always like, "Oh, how's that teenage daughter?" And I'm like, I still strike fear in her, so she's good. Just the right
Uh,
amount.
yeah, yeah.
You
I
know?
have stepkids, and always telling them like, these things you do, we all do them.
Hmm.
They don't just go away. You don't turn 21 and all your habits fall off. You
No,
know,
gotta work at it.
all the habits you're building, this is the who you're preparing to be. And generally that pulls them in the right direction, or at least, I try to get I call them my kids, but they're my stepkids, and um, I just tell them, I get them to a place where they're making an intelligent decision.
That's
It's
good.
like, if this is the way you want to be, there's going to be consequences if it's negative. And generally it's not. They're solid kids, they make good decisions. But
Hmm.
I wish, I was raised in the old John Wayne school of throw them against the wall and, shape up and all that good stuff.
Me too.
Yeah. And I wish somebody would have said a few of these things to me when I was a kid, like I really dwelt on the delusion that, I'm going to be an adult and all of a sudden I'm not going to have to worry about this stuff anymore. But
Right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
know. It's like you turn a certain age. I don't know what the drinking age is. It's 21 across the board in US,
Hmm.
right? Okay, so in
Yep.
Alberta it's
Yep.
18.
Okay.
So when we turn 18, we can go to the bars out in Alberta and in Ontario. I think that's about it. I think Alberta and Ontario. Everywhere else is 19, and then the
Oh,
States is
wow.
21. So I know we're rebels out here. So so we're going to the bar at 18 and we think we've got the high life and we can do whatever we want because we're adults now. You still don't
Right.
talk back to your parents. That's still scary. Like that's
Right,
playing with
right, right.
fire at that point. Like you're still scared even as an adult. Like I ain't gonna talk that kind of crap to my parents. But you know, you don't have a clue. It's always that you always hear the same old, "If I knew then what I know now, I'd probably be a very different person." And that's why you're
Hmm.
right. I 100% agree with you. We need to teach our youth that there are actions for their consequences, and those actions will be, depending on how they choose to learn that lesson, will either turn into a pattern or a lesson, and that's their choice. And that's the only gift they have, is that it's a choice.
Yeah.
So if you're going to create this pattern, be prepared to be this adult, be prepared to struggle, be prepared for X, Y, and Z, and don't come crying to me because I'm giving you the cheat book. to say,
Right.
these are the habits you're forming to become this person.
Yeah,
Right. So I agree with
exactly.
you 100%. We need to like rein in some of our youth because I was, I was I was on a call. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I was talking to, a really great guy out here in Alberta. His name's Corey. And we were talking about the generational age gaps. Now, I made a mistake and said Gen X, but it's Gen Z. So, 'cause I'm tail end of Gen X and you're Gen X, and so is he. He's
Hmm.
Gen X. So I'm like right in that. They call it, we have a subcategory. It's called Exennial, right? Because we're like, right, like Exennials. Because they made the subcategory because most of us had Gen X siblings and boomer parents and we're treated the same. So we're stuck in that. We have that Gen X kind of attitude, but then we grew up in the millennial aspect where there was like now there was phones and computers, but it was we still went home when the street lights came on. We still picked up the payphone and went, you have a collect call from mom, I'll be home in 5 minutes. Click, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
So you still did all those things. We're right in the middle of the transition. So
Yep.
we still bleed a lot of the Gen X attributes, right? And traits
Hmm.
and the I don't care, right? So there's a lot like my kids will be like, "Mom, I came home and my friend did this." I'm like, "I don't care. Figure it out. I don't care." Like and that's a lot. Then my kids get that a lot when they're telling me, drama at school, like especially my 14-year-old and I'm like, "I don't care. Figure it out." I'm like, "I was 14, I had to deal with it. You'll be fine. Here's your opportunity to do problem solving and critical thinking. See you later." Figure out life. And because a lot of parents don't do that. And now you're looking at these generations that are now coming in, and the Gen Z is really difficult. A lot, not all of them, but a lot of them are really difficult to deal with because they're very like lackadaisical and kind of naive, and common sense isn't so common. And they're they're very sensitive about a lot of different things. And then they're very passionate about things that don't make sense to us. Like it's like they take a word that we would be respectful of and then they just throw it around like it's no big deal and it's like, "Oh, you guys are too sensitive." And we're like, "No, we're just not ignorant." you know right? So it's like stuff like that, right? Or it's and then it blows my mind about how they think like they deserve awards, like it's the participation trophy. Well, we showed up, we should be paid. And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh
no."
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
participation trophies did nobody any favors. And I remember I told my kids that because I played competitive sports my entire youth. And I remember I used to tell my kids would get on like they'd go into whatever sport they're playing, soccer, whatever, football. I was my son's football coach for a bit. And I
Oh
said to him,
nice.
I was like, "I will bench you if you do not bring it on this field." I'm like, "If you are interfering in any way, if you are not listening to your team, I'm like, "If you screw up, I will bench you." And he's like, and everyone's looking at him and he's like, "She will." And I did. Mid game, I benched him. I was like, "Get up, go sit down,
Nice.
go think about what you did." And he's just like,
Think about what you did.
he's like, "Mom," and I'm like, and he is a taste of my own medicine. He is very much my personality, so he will fight with me. But I just say to him, I'm like, tough. I'm like, everybody is a team here. If you are showboating in any way, if you are trying to take the stage, if you are interfering with any play, or you are not executing your plays for whatever reason, I'm like, go sit down. Like there are other kids
Yep.
here that want to play. I'm like, "You're not on the field to have a good time. You're on the field to win. This is a win or lose game. There are winners and there are losers. If your mom and dad tell you that you're here to play the game and have some fun, they're losers. I'm sorry, they lost, and this is their way of making everyone feel better that you should be a part of the participation trophy, and it's for the experience." No, it's not. It's a win or lose game. That's why there's lots of tickets sold for football. That's why there's people who like certain teams and certain players. That's why we go. Not because everyone's having fun on the field. So I
Yep.
get frustrated with that because I'm like, no, it's a win or lose game. You have to have some competition in you. So my son, I didn't coach his football team last year. The league is asking me to coach this year, and I'm like, I don't think I should do that. My
A
son's
lot of
like,
work.
"Don't coach." Ah, is what it is. But anywho, we'll carry on with the date. Let's see. We are just over an hour, so we'll wrap up. I know you're a busy guy, and what you're doing is amazing, Kyle. Thank you so much for being on Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to get a lot of great things out of you. I'm hoping that my my wonderful people and listeners that are in Dallas will definitely check you out and come find you and get you to help them out, because I think what you're doing is an invaluable service. So thank you for sharing what you do. I appreciate that. So if you're looking,
Yeah, anybody. I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're a local business, it doesn't work too well for commercial unless it's emergency related, emergency cleaning, emergency water breaks, fire control systems. That works pretty well for them, but otherwise, it's not a great fit for commercial. But anybody for home, any trade for roofers, remodelers, anything, reach out. We'll put a package together for you that's custom to you. And like I said, I guarantee results. We're not the cheapest in the world. We're not for everybody. The other thing I do is exclusivity. That's another thing that most SEOs don't offer.
Mhm.
So if you have an HVAC company, you're the only HVAC company I'll be working for in your area,
Mhm.
and uh, and then you get the guarantee with it. So at 6 months, if I don't have you where I say I'm going to have you, then I start working for free. I stand behind my work just like you do. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, my website, frontburnermarketing.net, not com, but .net.
I know I'm a .net too.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. I know you always going to tell people .net, .net.
Yep.
So
But
sorry,
Kyle Bailey everywhere online. You can find me. I'm easy to
say your
find.
email again.
My email is kyle@frontburnermarketing.net. So it's front burner, just like a front burner on your stove, not front runner, because I mumble sometimes. Front burner, just like a front burner on your stove,
Okay.
frontburnermarketing.net.
Perfect. Well, I'm hoping that people in your area and other areas will reach out to you, because, like I said, what I think you do is a great thing. I know you're more local into Texas. Whereabouts in Texas are you? Are you in Dallas or Houston, or where are you?
I'm in Austin, but I mean, we work for people
Okay.
all over the nation. I'm talking to a guy just before this meeting. I was talking to a solar guy in Florida, but he serves several states, so we're talking about a multi-state type thing. So we can work on anybody's business in the states. I like to stay U.S. or Canada, but we can actually work worldwide. But U.S. or Canada, that's what I like to stay with.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I think what you're doing is great. So
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you for being a part of the show.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap us up here. So for those of you that would like to join Devil's Advocate Trades Edition, please hit me up, Lisa at lpmenterprises.net, or send me some of your suggestions of what you'd like to hear. Other than that, I appreciate you all joining the show and listening in. I will see you guys next time. Okay.